Make a couple other notes about the food service industry. Hospital food, Florence Nightingale, that's perhaps one of the most common depictions of her because she was most critical in the structuring of hospital food and especially the nutritional end of hospital food. So she established kind of the modern elements of dietetics and really looking at food and changing it from kind of a mush and molasses menu in the 19th century to provide nourishing food to the ill and wounded. So, of course, she did a lot of that in Turkey during the Crimean War and in the other wars to follow as well. And the model was then used historically over time. So, hospital food today, I don't know the last time you've been in a hospital, but that sure doesn't look like the hospital food that I've been given when I've been in a hospital. It's looked probably a little bit more like this. However, more and more the food system is changing in hospitals, and they've learned the power of plant-based foods and kind of proactive medicine through the use of food to battle chronic disease in people, populations of the planet. And there are culinary strategies to make these meals irresistible. And what is most important now is access to quality, healthy food to enhance local economy by purchasing community-based suppliers, and in some cases, even creating hospital gardens, which allow fruit and vegetable prescription programs to come along. Very interesting to see. So there are some examples of regional projects, and here's just one of them that I was very lucky to see, which is FreshMed in New York City, and that's Robert Graham there, who is a doctor as well as a gardener, if you will. And he also has a TED Talk out about food as medicine. And we see more and more of these conferences coming around to look at food as a holistic sense, which kind of reverts back to a lot of indigenous knowledge and indigenous understanding that if we use food as a preventative mechanism, we can find ourselves in a much more healthier format. Maybe we won't need as much of that reactive surgery. We can use food as a proactive sense. So some other developments in food service over time, we have, of course, retirement residences and adult communities that became more full service in their food service offerings. That's thanks in part mainly to Social Security, which allowed these projects and welfare projects, which allowed these communities to be created. We also have more office jobs and contract food service and industrialized and business food service. And then also we have transportation companies, right? Airlines, trains, cruise ships that have developed their food over time. Of course, anytime an economic downturn really happens, instead of getting a full meal on an American Airlines domestic flight, you might get Biscoff crackers or nothing at all. And then as we see more discretionary income come back into play, we begin to see those offerings expand a little bit more. So other trends, there is a shortage of qualified food service personnel right now. It's very difficult, especially in rural areas, to find qualified people and people who want to stick around for a while. And that's not to say the management level, but more so in the hourly level. Of course, there's the awakened interest in health and well-being, so we're seeing a lot of restaurants reformulate their menus, or even some brands begin to see a slowing in sales. Some of the challenges that we face today, well, of course, the economy and recession. We just kind of came out of a pretty rough recession recently. We have competition, of course. There are all sorts of different types of restaurants coming out. One of the more common trends for competition is the fine casual, which is kind of blending the fine dining elements with a fast food mentality. So places like Shake Shack are a good example of this, where they don't sacrifice on quality, but they are still in a fast food manner or a quick casual manner. Building and maintaining sales volume, of course, is always a challenge as more competition comes in. Recruiting and retaining employees, as we had noted previously. Labor costs, of course, as minimum wage continues to raise, and the demand for other benefits, even if part-time, as we see Starbucks and others giving their employees full benefits, even if they are simply a part-time or educational benefits or otherwise, and these kind of wage disparities that have happened between kitchen and front of house people. All these questions are continuing to need to be addressed by the emerging leaders like you in the restaurant industry, and the hospitality industry in general as we move forward. And finally, also government regulations on meal composition, nutrition posting, and food safety. This is actually something I'm working on quite a bit and that I've worked on at the Harvard Food Law and Policy Clinic. And how do we create regulations which aren't necessarily too intrusive to the food service or restaurant industry, but also that are meaningful in creating the change that we want to see in a healthy and livable environment as well. So finally, food service today, it is a $1 trillion industry, and the overall economic impact of the food service industry is very large, is incredible. And the expectation today for the food is to be of high quality, prepared to conserve its nutritive value, and served in the best condition and manner possible. And often that includes in the fastest time as well, and at certain times of the day. So that is just a basic overview of food service management. So I hope you enjoyed the class this semester. And of course, anytime along the way, if you have any questions, you can feel free to email me. Otherwise, as always, just feel free to click the arrow down in the bottom right and move on to the next page and the next activity.